The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is...
John C. Myers.
And we are a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in popular and not so popular franchises. And today we are discussing Pet Sematary from 2019. Now, as mentioned at the end of last show, I had seen this one before, but for whatever reason, it went in one ear and out the other. And I barely remembered anything going into this. I don't know why. And you had not seen it, correct?
I've not seen it, and I have a pretty good, after watching it, I have a pretty good idea why.
Right. There were a few things that I liked about it, but it was a little bit just sort of like, and again, as we've said, whenever we talk about something with a remake in it, we're watching all these movies very close together. Mm-hmm. And so it does really extra feel like you're retreading ground.
Right.
You know, and granted, we had only had one film in between these two original ones. So it was kind of like extra hurting on that level, not like watching all the Friday the 13th and then rewatching, you know.
Right, and then coming back to it. Yeah,
right.
No, this is just once removed.
Yeah, I do like the directors, I think, because I did see their Starry Eyes film from 2014, and I remember liking that as far as like a lower budget, kind of indie, lost in LA, wannabe stardom type of film. That one worked.
Pretty good movie. Would pair well with Neon Demon, I think.
Yes, I would agree. Yeah. That's good stuff. So I remember thinking when I read about this, I was like, well, at least they got kind of interesting people to give a shot to this. And I do think, if I remember right, Stephen King helped write the script to this one too, unless that was like, I didn't figure that out actually. I wonder if that's still like a based on his original, or was he actively involved in writing this screenplay?
I think it's just based on, because it's mainly this guy Jeff Bueller, and there's like this Matt Greenberg, who sort of wrote this initial treatment to it, just sort of got a story credit.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
And
there's allegedly another guy, David Kajanich, if I'm saying that all right, that went uncredited.
Yeah, it must have snuck by at the end and I missed the based on a story adapted by Stephen King.
Right. Yeah.
Also adapted by Stephen King. We're getting technical here. But just diving into this sucker. Open on a bunch of ominous shots in front of a nice cabin, some drone shots, as have become very ubiquitous in horror movie openings at this point. We've got the drones, we're going to use them over a forest and stuff. I'm not against that. It's just like we see it all the time now. It's
just a little overplayed at this moment. I can think of like 4 other movies off the top of my head that use the same stuff, and like specifically horror movies.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's putting like no thought into it. I'm sure you can just go with countless,
or even trailers that I can think of.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Cut to a bunch of classic shots of a happy family driving into a new town, just like the first one, which will probably say a whole lot. We get a name-checked Gage and Church, just even in this scene, as they pull up to their kind of new storybook-looking home. Immediately, Mom gets scared by a semi tearing by. So at least we're establishing that back here.
There's so much here that is just like, and I think some of it's just because watching the other one so close. It's hard not to just compare the two.
It's going to be so hard. Yeah.
There's so much of this one that feels, it's all just signifiers of the other one. You know what I mean? Like, so it just feels like there's all these like sort of box checking of like, well, we did that and we did that, but it's also, it's an adaptation. So
that's true too. Yeah. It does make it a little bit difficult to talk about, like, especially lining up 2 recordings of us talking about it, just going through. And then Lewis is faced with a bloody nose on his first day, except not the kid with half of his brain falling out. He gets an easier first day on the job in this one.
He gets a little bit of a reprieve.
Bloody noses.
This time around, Lewis is played by Jason Clarke, who's been in a bunch of stuff, but unfortunately, I always think of him from Serenity, which is a unflattering role to think of him in. And if you have never seen this Matthew McConaughey movie, I recommend.
Oh yeah,
you check it out. Don't read or learn anything about it.
Yep.
But just watch it and be amazed.
Watch it with some people if you can.
Yes.
And just you wait. Strap in.
Yeah.
I recognized him from Terminator Genesis, unfortunately.
Oh, wow.
Genesis with a Y, remember?
Yeah. No, I mean, we watched it. I just don't even remember it. It just
right.
Talk about passing right through you, yeah.
Right. Back to the house, Mom, Rachel, and Ellie see kids in animal masks with digging equipment and wheelbarrows walking through the woods down the path of their house. This kind of stuff this shot almost works for me because this does lay in the realm of folk horror and that kind of thing, which I'm a sucker for.
Yeah.
Masks, farming equipment, totems, that kind of stuff. Kids,
I just wish they would have done something with that. It just like, as I was like, oh, okay, well, this is kind of weird. Is there going to be more with like the town involved? No, it's pretty much just that, an excuse for a mask to be seen later.
Right.
And it just seems very thin and just like, hey, wouldn't this be cool?
Yeah.
If we did this, which can be fine.
Yeah, you almost need a scene later on that you never get of them out in the town or something like that, and some like weird parents are like sewing a rabbit mask for their daughter to put their pet down or something.
It's just sort of like this empty signifier of like, yeah, this is a horror movie thing. Like, isn't this kind of creepy?
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason that bothers me, not even in the comparison to the other one, but you can easily compare to the other one in this way, is that like none of the relationships between the characters and the family that we meet is interesting or complex in any way. Like in the first one, when they move out there, Tasha Yar and Lewis are fighting about stuff, or like, fighting about how to, tell Ellie about death. That doesn't really happen here. They're kind of like, should we? Oh, I don't know. Okay. Like, I don't know. There's they take away her parents and the dislike of Lewis, who we'll get into a little bit later. And that kind of renders that inner conflict sort of gone. Yeah. So I think I'm a little bit harsher on this stuff after watching it, just because like, if there was something else, if there was a there, this stuff might not have stunk so much.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Otherwise, it does just look like cardboard cutouts of the previous family and then cardboard cutouts of something new that they wanted to put in as just imagery that doesn't carry any weight.
Yeah.
Ellie, the little girl, goes out to explore the path again, and she finds herself by herself in the pet cemetery, and all the graves look pretty okay. They've got like little tokens and totems and stuff like that of the pet's life. And of course, she is drawn to the big mound of bramble that likely has the burial ground beyond it. And then she's startled by a big old John Lithgow in the woods. And I say that with love because I like that guy.
Now John Lithgow has become Harry and the Hendersons.
You're the doctor's little girl.
Eleanor Cree, but you can call me Ellie.
I'm Judson Crandall. You can call me Judd.
Yeah, John Lithgow playing the role of Judd. He doesn't have a lot to do. Again, it is the sad part that although everyone loves some John Lithgow, I blame the director and the kind of the script for this, because he's given like one or two emotional scenes, but he doesn't have near the presence. Yeah,
well, it's also like he doesn't ingratiate himself into the family in the same way. In the first one, you have like Judd just kind of showing up at the beginning and immediately like, hey, I saved Gage from getting hit by the truck. And here I am, talking to you and introducing you to the town and introducing you to all these concepts. Whereas this one, he's just at the pet cemetery for some reason.
Oh, right.
And gets her. He doesn't have that same hominess that Fred Gwynn had. And he's not really given room to, like you said, like he's just he's got a couple lines. He's really just kind of more of an expository guy for a lot of this. Yeah. And I normally love John Lithgow, but he doesn't really do a whole lot here.
Right. Excised are all the scenes between Judd and Lewis drinking beer on the porch, just being normal guys to set up their like neighborly relationship. And now, you're right. He's backstory database in this. Yeah.
It's a little bit more interested in keeping things moving than establishing relationships. And I do like how awful John Lithgow looks, though, and I don't mean that like is like making fun of it, but like he's all like spotted and looks very, very old. And I also like the touch of the white beard, but still the tobacco stained strips.
Judd immediately launches into explaining the idea of the pet cemetery to Ellie.
See this one over here? I carved this myself. That's my dog, Biffer, and it's true. He was a hell of a sniffer.
Here the mom stumbles into the scene and immediately takes her away. And it just, again, falls flat to me because it's not like the family discovers it or he like takes him on a tour or something like that. For whatever reason, he's out there and there is like uneasiness between him and Rachel at this point, I think.
Yeah, whereas that uneasiness came from him showing them a pet cemetery in the first place rather than like, the daughter just wandering into it. And
it was his choice. Lewis talks to Ellie about why pets don't live long or as long as humans. And Mom starts in with the whole, like, Nana is looking down on us. And, this is where we get the first little bits about Rachel's sister, Zelda. And that causes Rachel to immediately run into a room and look at photos of Zelda. And then we experience a bunch of flashbacks. So I'm afraid that even though Zelda is a great character in the first movie, like, Rachel has no personality in this film beyond being haunted by Zelda. It's just like every single time it's like she's like right there in the room with her.
And it's like kind of a neat setup, but it doesn't really pay off in any really good way. And I think thematically, whereas in the book and in the Mary Lambert's version, there's a little bit more of the being unable to deal with death and the parents kind of, hiding her away and not wanting to deal with that and family secrets and all this stuff. Where in this one, Zelda is almost more monstrous in this one to a degree, because you never even like see her full form. You just see like pieces of her.
Yeah, contorted.
And they also change, one of the changes they made, instead of Rachel being left alone to care for her just choking and dying and her being unable to do anything about it and feeling that guilt, they made her more directly responsible for her death.
Exactly.
Through a malfunctioning dumbwaiter that she shouldn't have been using. And I thought that was an odd choice. I mean, you could play that dumbwaiter sound, the creaky dumbwaiter sound at key moments.
Yeah.
But it felt very separate from the rest of the movie.
Right.
And I think making Rachel more culpable in that was not a great choice.
It gives you a creepy visual at the end, and like I did, we'll get to it later, but I did kind of like the bit of a jump scare of the body falling down that chute. But you're right, as far as what her motivation goes through, it's like, I'm not saying she deserves to feel bad by any means, but like it feels a little bit more sinister than the casual cruelty of making a 10-year-old take care.
Right. Yeah. And then just like her having to deal with like feeling responsible and failing, even though like just completely unequipped to do it. Whereas this one, it's like, well, you were told not to use the dumbwaiter. So that's kind of,
right.
It raises more questions in a way that I don't think serves the plot or the themes very well.
And of course, we do get the parents not agreeing on the concept of an afterlife, because Rachel's kind of clinging to that still. And Lewis wants nothing to do with it. Cut to finally the introduction of Victor, who actually has half of his face smashed up, and the makeup effects right here, pretty darn good.
Disgusting. Yeah.
You see, one of the nurses says,
His brain, I can see it.
Camera pans down and you see it.
See, there they are.
Right. Well
She's
done.
not lying.
Well done, guys.
I did feel like Lewis didn't do a whole lot to try to save Pascal.
Oh, have you ever tried to save someone on a deathbed?
Yeah, all the time. But no, it's just like he's like, oh, this guy looks bad. Okay, we should probably do something, and then the guy like immediately dies. It just and I know like in the previous one he didn't do a whole lot either, but it felt like he did a little bit more. It's still a strange thing that I don't fully understand why Pascal's like, yeah, thanks, buddy.
Right. Yeah, especially because that's the whole theme of the character is you helped me. Yeah. Now I'll help you. He did the bare minimum.
It'd be a more alpha move for Pascal to go haunt the guy that killed him.
Right.
Rather than this soy beta cuck nonsense of helping others.
Right. Well, it's also like, and this is another idea that we can play with later, but like, I think you could have removed Pascal from this version of the movie completely, because he barely does he barely interacts with Lewis, and I don't even think like he's around Rachel, but he doesn't like, promote
He doesn't
her.
rent a car for her.
Right. Because that's what you want a ghost around for, damn it.
Yeah.
Have you stood at those lines?
Yeah, I need a ghost assistant. That would be nice.
Oh, yeah.
For all my car rental needs that are coming up all the time.
Right.
But no, he does. I think it's also because they make the dreams significantly dreamier in this one.
That's true.
So like after that happens and Lewis is upset and he even like mentions to Rachel that he knew my name.
Right.
And Rachel's like, what? He's like, nothing. Which one of those, like, I don't understand why you didn't. If that happened to me, I would be telling everyone.
Yeah.
And I understand not everyone thinks like me, and that's a good thing. But it is just like, that's a weird thing to keep to yourself. So he goes to sleep and he has the dream, or is it, that Pascal shows up. But rather than Pascal just kind of being outside and being like, hey, come get me, like he exits a door in the middle of his room and like ends up outside.
Yeah.
And it's way more like trippy and strange. So when he wakes up with mud on his feet, and I don't know why I didn't think about this in the first one, but in this one, I'm like, there should be the next 20 minutes is him trying to hide that and deal with that.
Yes,
that was my first. I was like, you got to wash those sheets, dude.
Not just your feet, but also the sheets. Yes.
Yeah,
I would notice
the comforter. Dry clean that.
Right.
But it's a little bit more strange that, I thought this was a dream, but his feet are muddy. Whereas the first one, it's a little bit more like, is he sleepwalking? Mm-hmm. Was that actually a dream? Yeah. So I could see the argument for that being more effective in terms of this was clearly a dream, but still this happened. Right. But I didn't like it as much.
Yeah. Yeah. Ellie walks over to Judd's house with a basket of cookies and just walks in and starts looking at a bunch of photos and stuff, and then like finds his revolver. And he just shuts the drawer. Yeah. He doesn't bother to immediately go lock it up or like take it away from view or anything like that. Maybe that's just not how you do it in the country. I don't know. Yeah. But I
mean, that's up to them to teach their kids right, not him to be at all safe with his firearms.
There you go. Yeah. The family has Judd over for dinner, who's lived here in Ludlow all of his life. I do like the line where Lewis asks how far back the property extends, and Judd simply says,
well, it's further than you'd ever care to go.
Which is kind of a wonderful, like, dotty old man type of thing. He's like, wait, no, I asked you a specific question, man. It's right. Like, no, you never want to go back that far.
Yeah, that raised a kind of interesting question I never thought about before, is because they own the property that the pet cemetery is on, apparently.
Oh, right.
Because Rachel mentions it. It's like, do we own this? And he's like, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Why don't you guys know that? That's strange. Yeah. You bought this house.
Yeah, you could immediately be like, all right, no more pet cemetery rituals. No more kids allowed in here. We're putting up an electric fence. That's a route you could go. And then like the townsfolk are...
Shock children. That's a good suggestion.
Well, it's like, that would be the classic folk horror idea of people from the city coming in, messing with an arcane old ways type of thing. And then the townsfolk are just like, no, we need our pet cemetery to still exist, whether it's on your property or not. See?
Yeah. Or put in a trampoline. That's what I suggest, because then the kids will be like, well, I don't want to go do that. There's a trampoline.
There's a trampoline. Can we bring our dead kittens?
Yeah, there's all these just abandoned wagons and wheelbarrows full of dead dogs, but kids love trampolines.
Yep. That night, Rachel talks about her sister and how she's been thinking about her nonstop since she's moved to here. And I'm like, yeah, we get it. I know, because every scene with you is with her. Yeah. And that's when we get the whole more specific backstory of the dumbwaiter not working properly. And I did like the shot of the sister falling down the chute, and the idea that she can still hear her in the walls. Like, just on its own grounds, I like that effect, but I didn't like, kind of like you were saying earlier, I didn't need her brooding about that all the time.
Rachel didn't have a ton to do in the last one either, but I think like they give her even less to do. And the fact that they remove any element of like the family strife with the parents not liking Lewis, even though that wasn't like totally fully understood, but you got the sense that they didn't like each other in the last one. And then that boils up into some stuff that just sort of, again, flattens this character. And like, there's just their relationship is fine. They're married. That's what you needed to know. That's
exactly. It. Some kids are getting ready for Halloween, and Judd shows Lewis the body of Church out in the road, which they hide from Ellie. It's one of those telling and not showing kind of bits where Judd just announces like,
"I'll put a spell on you."
You already have, sweetheart.
You just known this kid for like a day. Like, slow down, Hoss.
They lean real heavily on that they just tell it, like you said, they tell it to you. They don't really like give you a reason to believe that at all. It's just sort of sketched out.
Yeah, because you need that idea later on.
Yeah, because you get the sense in the first one that like, well, Judd's around a lot more, and they're hanging out, and he's kind of ingratiated. There's a friendly neighbor. They're having a picnic together. He's showing them around and stuff like that. Whereas this is like, there's a guy, they had him over for dinner once, and that was nice.
Yeah.
I don't know. You also got, when at the dinner scene, you also get this little scene of Ellie dancing to like the Sugar Plum Fairy.
Oh, right.
Little ballerina outfit that they all enjoy.
Right. Because that's what every, 9-year-old girl does, is dance ballet. Sure. Most, I guess. Yeah,
I don't know. What are you accusing me of?
They decide to bury the cat in the pet cemetery and resolve to tell Ellie that he merely ran away. So at this point, Judd decides to lead Lewis over the bramble. So how do we feel about the new look of the Pet Sematary and all of that? It's very blue.
They basically go into Night Trap from Sega CD. Like, I thought the compositing work wasn't great. It's very digital and very like them on CG backgrounds.
Right.
And I didn't love that.
Yeah.
It's like it's decently done, but it just seems very fakey and not in the way that like the hyper real, not hyper real, but like the very theatrical graveyard scene in part 2.
Right.
And I think like if it was sold a little bit more like that, I might have enjoyed that a little bit more, but it was supposed to be just like, no, this is real and serious.
Or that one really bizarre shot in part 1 where he's clearly like on a lot or against the screen or something, but there's something about that just felt more uncanny. Maybe because it's later in the film and he's starting to lose his mind a little bit. So exactly. That may have been more of the idea. The
discussion of death with Ellie and the cat kind of was buttoned up by that point. Like I mean, where she's worried about the cat, just the concept of death in general, and whether after seeing the Pet Sematary, where in the book, in the previous one, like she's a lot more upset about it. This one, like she's bummed, but she's a smart kid. And when Lewis tells her about the metabolism being the internal clock, she's like, yeah, all right, well, that sucks, but okay. Whereas before, the kid was just not buying it and not having it. And so to have this kind of like, oh gosh, the cat's dead, didn't have the weight of it, or like the weight of like, she can't know what, we got to get this back. This is going to really upset her. It seemed like she might kind of understand it.
Yeah, that's true. We do get the shout that Judd refers to as just a loon in this one. And I enjoyed that, even if it is the checking the boxes of the previous one, just because I like that scene in the first one.
Yeah. And I did like when they're walking through whatever, like dry ice puddles, they're stepping through that's just like full of bones.
Yes, that was cool.
Yeah. I enjoyed that bit as well. It did make it seem, we talked about in the Mary Lambert version, how it just felt like they were on a long hike and that was about it. But this certainly does feel more ominous. I wish it was a little bit more practically done, I suppose.
Next morning, parents do explain to Ellie that Church merely ran away, but she's not buying it. She's like, he was just outside the window the whole time, and I think he's even in the closet right now. And they do approach the closet, open it up, and sure enough, there he is, looking a little worse for wear, looking a little gross, but I don't know, still a cute cat.
I do like, I like the change from the cat, from a gray cat to what it looked like on the cover, the book cover of the 80s original book cover.
I had that one, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like a Maine Coon, that kind of tiger striping thing. I just like that they bothered to make that change.
Lewis now researches the Ludlow Cemetery and finds mention of the dead bull, finds mention of a vet, this time from Vietnam and not from, World War II, who is missing from the cemetery. Later, Ellie is brushing Church, who then slashes at her, and Lewis has to heal her up. The first sign of violence from Church against
No longer
Ellie.
It's the smell or anything weird like that. It's just straight up violence. And with the research scene, you get another shot of people in masks, like again, feeling like this is going to pay off to something, and maybe it will in the prequel. I don't know, but that just sequence of him Googling map images and stuff like that, it wasn't a very interesting way to get that information across, I thought. I didn't really learn a lot about what happened. It's just like, there's the land I own, and okay.
Usually I'm a sucker for those kind of scenes in older movies where someone has to go to the library and look at microfiche and read about the witchcraft.
Rather than just being like him closing a Pornhub tab and being like, well, time to look at some maps.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I say this anytime this is brought up, but I laughed out loud when I went to see the movie The Dark is Rising, because I loved the book as a kid, and there was a real crappy version that came out a while. And somebody Googled, what is the dark? It's like this mythological black magic or something like that. What's the dark?
Dark. What's that about?
Lewis confronts Judd and just says,
there are places in this world that are older than either of us. Places that a rational doctor brain like yours will never understand.
What we did last night, we did for Ellie. And on the plus side, I do enjoy whenever somebody refers to like there are older places than humans ever truly like, I mean, that's just some pure like cosmic horror good stuff, you know, mystery. But then he immediately like, we did it for Ellie. And once again, I'm like, I'm just not buying your love for this like little kid. So
yeah. Like, because it also felt like in the first one that it wasn't just for Ellie, it was also for Lewis and for the family to not have to do Ellie. Whereas this, they really try to drive home that Judd really cares for Ellie. It just doesn't seem
now it's
real.
all Ellie's fault, really.
Basically, yeah, is what I'm getting at.
Right. Lewis and Rachel are starting to get a little intimate when Church jumps up on the bed and brings in a half-dead bird as a present and starts just eating it, which is pretty funny, actually. Lewis picks up Church, rushes him out of the room, and immediately he gets scratched by Church. So Church is starting to go nuts on everybody. Guess what? If Rachel's left alone for any period of time, she starts hearing thumping and creaking in the house, bringing to mind her sister. Looks behind the bathroom mirror, and she thinks she sees a dumbwaiter chute and a jump scare that is her sister tumbling down the chute again. Now, again, I like that visual. It's kind of a cool, like, you open up the mirror, there's a weird hole behind there, and a body just
Candyman style.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just a body goes down and past out. Like, that's kind of cool looking, but it's kind of wrapped up in this new Zelda, so I'm not as affected by it.
Wait, Tears of the Kingdom?
Yes, right, this new Zelda.
But I do, it felt like, well, we need a scare here because not much is happening, and we should probably just do a jump scare because we bothered to do this dumbwaiter thing. Right. I don't know. Like, it just kind of felt like, okay, and now back to the movie. Right. It just, all the Zelda, as I said, all the Zelda stuff just seems so ancillary to the rest of it.
Yeah. In a scene that is stupid for two reasons, next, Lewis finds drawings that their kids have done. Gage drew some blood coming out of a head, I guess. It barely looks like that. He gets all upset. Now, it's dumb for two reasons. One, I hate this trope, and I'm so tired of a trope of like kids drawing stuff and you know, creepy kids. Like, you might as well put music box music behind it or something like that. Two, why is Gage concerned? Like, we have no concept of Gage even as a kid at this point either. Like, he's barely a character in this movie, really.
Right.
Maybe that's harsh, but like, it's just like they're trying to give him something to do that he didn't even do in the scene. And now we're all concerned, like, what is Gage noticing something? What is the implication?
Yeah, it's a weird bit, like, and we'll get into the changes that happen with those kid characters, but it seems like they're trying to put some of the stuff from Ellie in the first one, or, you know, in the original and in the source material onto Gage.
His psychic ability type of thing?
Yeah, I think just because you have that element of him having the information, but being, you know, I'm a baby. I can't tell people that, which doesn't make, I mean, Pascal, what are you doing? This is worse than even saying discombobulated or whatever to a kid. Right. But like, you're trying to get a baby to be a harbinger and like to warn people about this stuff. But I also, I had the same thing where like he's angry about this picture of blood. These I went to a Thanksgiving party many years ago, and a friend's daughter had drawn a picture of her family with. As she put it, this is the family with blood on their mouths, and they all had like bloody mouth. They just tons of red around them. And she is now full blown goth, huge shoes, painted face kind of thing. Nice. And so it's like, hell yeah, because we all just laughed and thought it was funny. Yeah, but,
that's amazing.
Yeah, but no, he's pissed that he drew a head with some red stuff on it.
Right,
and I think it also. This movie trucks in a lot of like Stephen King universe Easter eggs in there. You'll eventually see later like a town sign for dairy. From it. When Lewis goes to investigate, like, oh, I got to see what Gage is up to. The cat is sitting in the crib with Gage. So that was very creepy.
I love that shot, actually.
It also made me think of Cat's Eye.
Sure.
Yeah. And just like, and that thing. And so all these little tiny things are in there. And then later, Gage is really having the Pascal stuff. He's saying, Pascal. In this way that's almost red rum.
Oh, sure.
Which I guess initially there was going to be, like, they were going to drive past like a sign that was like D. Torrance Realty. That it was going to be like Danny Torrance is a realtor. I think it's because of the choices that are made down the road that they like, well, we need to put this element of it onto Gage. Yeah.
God, I barely picked up on the Gage being psychic in this. And by barely, I don't think at all. Because
because he's unable to communicate any of that. It's more just like, versus
here's a
like
picture.
Oh, what's going on here? This is
Right.
mysterious, even though like it does feel like, as you mentioned in the Mary Lambert version, tacked on of like, now we got a psychic kid too. Like, what's happening?
Hat on a hat. Next scene is Judd's drinking a Hams and shows Lewis some old books, including one on the Wendigo.
The Wendigo. You heard a lot about that all over the North Country back in the old days. It was a myth passed down from the local tribes up this way. But to them, it wasn't just some campfire story. They believed it. They feared it.
So we are full on name checking the Wendigo in this version, which I've thought, I watched this last night, so I haven't thought a lot about it, but I have considered. To me, how they handle the Wendigo in this is, I think that it is in an interesting way because it is a hinting at and not showing too much of the monster, because so often I will complain about like, okay, fine, we get it. There's a Wendigo and like, maybe it's creepier if you don't show it and that kind of stuff. Boy, they sure don't show it in this, but I do like knowing about the legend and hearing it and that kind of stuff too.
Well, they give you enough to go like, maybe that's what's happening, or it's something else. I don't know. It just throws something a little bit more supernatural at it, and is potentially, a more unifying thing that we were bemoaning the lack of in the Mary Lambert version. What I don't like in this scene is that Judd lays out his whole history with the place and how he knew about it. Mentions that he brought his dog back and the dog was mean, but maybe it wouldn't have worked because Church was a nice cat, that it would have been fine. So it completely eliminates Judd's involvement with the vet that came out. So like there's never any idea that like that a person might have ever been buried there.
Oh yeah.
But it's also that, he mentions that like the only reason he wanted to do it was just for Ellie, and that
once you feel the power of that place, you make up the sweetest smelling reasons to go back.
He's making it sound like he got a tattoo and he's excited to get another one. And if that was true, like, why did you wait, I don't know, 60, 70 years before you did it again? You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't you be just like raising squirrels all the time or something?
Why didn't he put his wife in there?
Yeah.
If he's so fixated, hey, is Ellie the first time that he's felt this kind of like draw? I guess it's just like the emotional connections are tenuous at best here.
And so I think trying to further absolve Judd of any sort of wrongdoing, really, he really meant well with this. I talked about how Judd seemed malevolently stupid, but I kind of miss that at the same time, where it's a little bit more human of that like, oh man, whereas this, it made it sound like, but the place has a power that will draw you there. Right. No, it doesn't, because you haven't been. Like, you just had this idea at this moment, but other than that, you've not like, I've been looking for an excuse to go back there. Yeah, and in the book, and I can't remember how much we discussed it in the Lambert version, but there is that idea that Ludlow has a weird effect on people, like the truck driver speeding up once he gets into Ludlow, which hits Gage and that kind of stuff. But it's a little less apparent in this, or maybe it's only focused on the cemetery itself instead of Ludlow as a whole. Much like Derry as a whole is like a terrible place. Right. Yeah. So if you wanted to do that, you needed to do a lot more. Exactly. Than just have this this one line of John Lithgow going like, yeah, place got a power, and you want to go back. Whether or not it's the Wendigo manipulating stuff, it is this more processing of grief and stuff like that, rather than like, no, you just want to see stuff come back from the dead. It's cool. Like, I mean, it would be kind of cool. Yeah. Well, it just becomes, Dave Letterman's Will It Float? It just becomes like a fun little thing, like what'll come back this time. But then he appends that line with,
sometimes dead is better,
because we have to have that.
Yeah, it just it without that big I don't know, do you call it a drawl, but without that accent, it just is like I guess it is better. Yeah. Next, Lewis tries to bring himself to put Church down, but thinks twice about it. And by put down, I mean hold him down and inject him with some sort of vet type syringe. Instead, he takes him out to the road and just wants him to leave.
just thought, yeah, sure, this will work. He just opens up a cage, cat walks off.
Yeah, your cat already came back. First of all, came back from the dead, and then
from
found
a
its way home
graveyard
from wherever you were. But you're like, nah, I bet if I go 12 miles, he won't get it. But that shot, the shot where he does leave him there, I thought was rather affecting when he's like driving away. And I don't know, because I'm like looking for Stephen King Easter egg. I don't know if that sign or like where he left him was supposed to be something where it's like danger, hazardous materials ahead or something.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I don't know, but it was sad. You're leaving a cat, like abandoning a cat. That's
for
sad.
sure. It's almost like I kind of wish that he would have taken him to the Ludlow city line or something like that, just to play on the idea that once you're back in Ludlow, things are bad. But maybe there's a chance if you get outside of there.
That would be awesome if he like just takes him like across state lines and like as soon as he gets across it, like dead, but then he brings him back alive. Dead, alive, dead, alive.
Right. Ellie's got a birthday party now, and she's just sort of moping around until Lewis gives her a stuffed cat gift. Seems a little soon, but whatever. I think the cat even has like fairy wings or something like that.
Yeah, it's like in a ballerina costume with fairy wings, and if you squeeze it, it goes meow.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of cute, but it made me think, like, is he giving her like a cat angel? So like your cat now has like a harp and wings and playing in heaven.
Well, it's also because they've told her at this point that, he went out looking for a church, but I think he ran away for real this time. And she's bummed, but again, like, I have this cat toy now. I'm fine.
Yeah.
So like the whole like motivating thing behind the movie just really doesn't matter. And that was a bit of a bummer, but whatever.
Lewis is romping around with the other kids at the party. He's got a blindfold on. He's chasing and playing like a hide and seek game. And so Ellie runs near the road to hide and sees church.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a few problems with this. First of all, the biggest problem is that I don't have the sweater that Gage is wearing.
Okay,
with a cool shark on it that says Fantastic. And I really like that sweater.
All right, listeners, if you can track down a sweatshirt, it is coming up on the holidays.
A man-sized child sweatshirt.
Yes, it is getting around the holidays here.
Yeah, I like to go to playground, scope out the latest styles. But it bothers me because it seems like this game is that they spin Lewis around. He's wearing a blindfold and he tries to get you. Ellie like runs far away and hides in a tree. That is not in the spirit of this game, Ellie. So I'm not saying she deserves what happens to her, but I'm not saying it.
Well, I was just confused by the rules of the game.
Yeah.
Was it more of like a spin around, like a hitting the pinata type of deal? Was it everybody stays in the circle? Oh no. Now Ellie's running out there. Is she hiding? Is it hide and seek? I need more. Yeah.
It's like a Marco Polo kind of situation.
Marco Polo. There we go. Yeah. All right.
But she sees, like you said, she sees Church walking down the street, which I love that. I like that. Just that was shot. A great shot. Ominously coming down the road, just like nothing.
That was a green screen shot, but that was a very well done green screen shot.
Is it demonic evil? Is it just a cat?
Yep.
If
you got cats, you've been questioning forever.
Comes with the territory. Yeah. Gage sees her and is like, and starts heading out there. Rachel sees him and is like, Gage! And sure enough, one of the trucks coming and the damn driver's on his phone.
Yep.
And which I like, it was like a flip phone.
Yeah.
So I like that they kind of like went, well, this is before smartphones, but not too far back.
Right.
But it's barreling down. But this time Lewis actually gets to Gage and is able to tear him away from the road. And then the truck, fishtails, and tries to turn, which throws its trailer off. And in a very Final Destination style death, crushes Ellie. And that was a bummer. Yeah. I'm trying to watch this thing on its own merits, but it's hard, like in the context of what we're doing. But a thing that I like in the first one versus this, these trucks, as we talked about, were these like just this inevitable force. Like they're just coming and they're death and it's going to happen to you and there's nothing you can do. When you do it this way, it makes that death more special. You know what I mean? Like it's this freak accident rather than seeming like this inevitability. Right. That you're going to get smashed by one of these trucks rather than like, he saved him from the truck, but then the trailer came flying off. Right. And it was a spectacular, cool thing, but it just made it a little bit more, I think, epic than it let the impact of it be, or impact maybe is the wrong word to use, but that it's like this really cool effect versus like letting the emotional weight of it carry you.
Sure. Yeah. Because otherwise, so what you're saying is, we would need like one or two more drive-bys of a truck You know, because at this point we only have one at the very beginning. We, you know, and Church, they're implied that he might have gotten hit by one, but you're right. It doesn't have the constant drumbeat of the trucks of the first one, which is so interesting. But if the truck would have just plowed into her instead of the freak accident of the oil tanker flying off, that would have been more effective. Yeah, I can buy that. That makes sense.
Spectacle rather than
an effect,
a devastating thing.
Yeah, a devastating thing that is based on like a thematic element that was introduced earlier on. Right, I can see that.
But anyway, so they switch it up. They kill off Ellie and not Gage. In concept, interesting, because you have, here's a more grown-up child that can talk and form sentences. At the same time, you know, you can see what the idea of it happening to Gage is a little bit scarier because he's like this not even fully formed human yet. But then when he comes back and he's evil, you're like, well, that makes that so much starker. But like now he's just speaking in these mostly full sentences and he's all malevolent for some reason, which I still have questions about what happens with, or, you know, what these ghosts and or these reanimated people are like and how they function.
The only thing that I really thought of with the whole switcheroo is just that Ellie has been the kid that they've been having the afterlife conversations with and the concept of death conversations. Now, it's not like in the first one, she couldn't feel a confusion or an empathy towards Gage, her little brother dying. Of course she could. But there is something a little bit more interesting as if setting up all these conversations about death and then bam, that kid goes, if only for one line that she says later on. Like, I do like some of the stuff when she comes back as if processing what her conversations with her parents were about prior.
Well, it almost felt like a synthesis of Pet Sematary and Pet Sematary 2, where you have like when Clancy Brown comes back and it's like, does he know he's dead? Is it like him figuring out that he's dead, or is he just like fully
enjoying it?
Yeah, because it's like, it would make sense if she's like, I came back and, you know, we talked about this stuff and there's nothing. There's just black, because well, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, let's get there. Because man, this movie picks up real fast once we get to that part.
It takes its time with the first one and then just like with the up until this moment and then just steps on the gas.
There's a funeral scene for Ellie, still with no Stephen King presiding in his hair, and I miss that. I do think that there was a funny moment. Do you think that like Judd gave Lewis a look here, like you think of what I'm thinking? You know, something like that? Because it kind of comes off that way. And it just occurs to me now, I'm asking you, are you thinking what I'm thinking about Judd asking Lewis if he's thinking what he's thinking? Because
I thought a little bit of like, it was a little bit more like, don't come up, buddy. Hey,
right.
Don't do it.
That it was a little bit more expressive than I remember the previous one being.
Yeah. Where it was more just like, it was unthinkable that could happen.
Right.
You know, because like they've already talked about it, how like, why would you ever do that?
Yes.
Whatever. But this one is clearly like, Judd's like, I know what you're doing, homie.
If I was standing next to you, you might be getting an old elbow in the ribs here.
Right. Yeah.
You know, Lewis and Judd drink whiskey by the fire after Rachel and Gage have just left. Now, not that it's that big of a deal, but like I really like those scenes in the first one of the two of them drinking beers together on the porch and just being dudes hanging out, having a beer. But yeah, this is the first time we get them, just the two of them hanging out. So we don't have that precedent to go on.
Or like that same kind of rapport, particularly because we already, it's worn pretty clearly on his face what Lewis is thinking, rather than the dad or Rachel's dad being there and having the whole fracas with Lewis in front of the church or whatever. Rachel is just like, I can't deal. I got to go. And that felt really weak.
Well, it just seemed too convenient.
Yeah. It's like, well, I'm out of stuff to do. I'm going to go.
Got to go brood about my sister somewhere else.
Yeah. Like I don't get it, where it just felt like in the other one, it made a bit more sense that the overbearing parents are like, we're going to protect you from him and whatever. Like, I know this is tough, but like, why don't you get away from it and stay with us? And it just felt very convenient that she just fucks off.
Sure.
But, but Lewis is like, oh, he sees Judd there and walks over, just like looks at him conspiratorially and then walks over to where he is with a couple of glasses and some whiskey.
And a little vial of night-night juice of some sort.
Yeah.
That he
just roofies.
He roofies Judd. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lewis puts something in his drink, and Judd does say something like, that place exploits your grief. So they're definitely like leaning on this emotional, supernatural quality of the burial ground.
It'd be cool if they showed that in any capacity, but
there you go.
Nope, they just had John Lithgow tell you that. And I'm still like not like, okay, so yeah, you just wanted to make sure he was out of the way so you could go do this.
Yeah.
Was it that much of an issue?
Yeah, like, couldn't outrun an old man. I mean, yeah, I guess he is a little spry, and he knows his way around the woods. He does seem a little bit more, together than like you could probably outrun Fred Gwynn a lot easier. That's true. After talking to his wife on the phone briefly, he goes and digs up his daughter from the graveyard. He does it, and I thought this is where the performance of Lewis in the first movie started elevating, and at this point I started getting more annoyed with Jason Clarke.
Yeah, well, because it's just like these. I don't know. I just like none of these relationships have felt very real or grounded in anything. So it just. I don't know. Feels like they're going through the motions, just moving pieces around. I mean, if you're going to have a father dig up the body of his dead daughter, like that needs, like you can't miss on that. Like, that needs to be solid performance too. When Lewis is carrying Ellie's body, we get the growling presence in the woods again, like something is following him. They even have a couple of shots from a really high angle where it's almost as if the Wendigo is staring down at him, because the Wendigo is supposed to be very, very tall. And if I remember correctly, this is like where he sees the Wendigo in the book. Like, which makes sense because things are really escalating at this point. So might as well. Well, he didn't even get the weird abyss monster in this one. Yeah.
Yes. Right.
I'd forgotten all about that. I was like, oh yeah, wait a minute. That's what the
totally.
Fuck? Yeah. He takes her there and of course buries her. You got to bury your own.
Oh, we did. There was a brief shot of Rachel in her childhood home, no parents, staring at the dumbwaiter that just starts bleeding. And, again, I didn't mind that as a shot and a concept, but I just don't have good feelings towards this relationship here. Yeah, well, it's also because it's been constantly happening. It didn't feel like, oh, this is an escalation and like that's how she knows something's off. It's just like, no, she's been freaking out about this the entire time. Yeah, again, it just tries to give her something to do. Lewis is back at the house. He finds bloody footprints leading into the house and down the stairs to the basement. Sneaks down into a little cubby that we've seen once before when he was chasing Church. He finds a little animal mask, and behind him, Ellie is there and asks, "Where am I?" And I did think that was effective. My favorite part of Ellie's resurrection for the rest of the movie, or at least for the next few moments, is when she's just very confused about what is happening. I think that's very effective and very well done. Makes some of the stuff that happens later a little bit more confusing, but I like that as a concept because, as I mentioned, you have this child that can form sentences and things that have thoughts about this stuff, and that confusion that happens at the beginning, but it's also that strange detachedness that's happening because he starts, he's excited to see her and he puts her in the bath. I love this scene. That scene's great. And he's combing her hair. There was a scene earlier where she is brushing Church and like, oh, you're sticky. And then Church freaks out. But he's not with her and the same thing's happening. And he sees like, some clumps of hair come out. And then he can see where the head's been stapled back together. And she's like, one side of her face is all droopy. And it was just very chilling. And I was like, okay, I'm on board. I'm liking what's happening here. And then after that, they're in bed and she's a little like same kind of thing. Like, I kind of remember my birthday party.
There was a truck and everything went black.
Well, it's okay now. Are you back?
Back from where?
Rather than still like being excited that she's back, it seems like Lewis is like, I don't know. Yeah. He's right. When she's like, I love you, Dad, he's like, maybe this wasn't, do you think he's regretting it a little bit there? Or it's like, I don't know, because like he kind of goes back and forth on it because he's like, just go to sleep. It's almost like when you're in an argument with someone, it's like, I'm tired. Shut up. Right. And she does, while she's mumbling and she's still coherent, she does have a line that I'm always kind of a sucker for. She says,
I can hear the woods.
eyes are closed, sweetheart.
Not like that. Inside.
You know, that kind of stuff works for me completely. So
Yeah, but they again, like they kick it into overdrive because the next morning Lewis wakes up and she is dancing, I think, in what she was buried in, which
I was very confused about this.
yeah, like why aren't you, I mean, she has the wherewithal to put it on herself. So,
Yep. But then why would it be muddy?
Clothes. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. Why would it be muddy? Maybe he dropped her get out of the mud. I don't know.
Yep.
But she's doing her sugar plum fairy dance and he comes out. It's like, oh, look at that. And then she just starts like throwing stuff around.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, stop doing that. And so again, I'm feeling this like, okay, well, now it's going to be this whole almost like that movie I referenced before, Death Dream, where it's like, I don't know what's happening to me and I'm angry and what's going on. But she rather quickly just goes full evil.
Yeah.
There's not even this
She
like
just,
slow
she
descent or
just
whatever.
needed to sleep on it. She just
guess,
needed
yeah.
a nap time, wake up, be set. I wish that would happen to me these days.
That would be actually very nice. Not to you. For me, I'm not like, yeah, no, I wish you were dead. But she, this is the scene where you see the dairy sign because she's trying to call Lewis and not getting hold of him.
Yep.
Very afraid of what's going on.
And then calls Judd to see if Lewis is okay. Wants to make sure that she won't get Pennywised on her way back to London.
Right.
You know, if it's the right time of year, of course. What, every 27 years? Like,
yeah, there's a cycle. I think. Yeah. You'd think they'd put that on the road sign that was like 26 years since last clown rampage.
Right. Yeah.
But Judd goes over to check and Lewis answers the door. It's like, hey, whoa, we tied one on, buddy.
Right,
That's crazy.
yeah.
But Judd notices that his hands are all dirtied up.
Yeah.
Okay, you gave your daughter a bath. How were your hands still that dirty?
True. Yes. Yeah, definitely puts together that Lewis has done something ill-advised. Judd notices Ellie upstairs in the house when he walks away, and he runs inside to grab his revolver while she finds Dad's scalpel. Judd goes upstairs to look for Ellie. We get a held shot of his ankle. See, just like in the first movie, and I don't want to beleaguer this point, but I remember getting a little confused over who's in whose house at that point too.
Yeah.
Because it shows Ellie up in that window, and I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be Judd's house or her house. But after the window shot, she reaches for the scalpel.
Yeah. I think she's
and then
still at
she's
home.
in the upstairs.
Then she goes,
so she beats Judd to his house.
She bilocates again, like Pet Sematary 2. She has Clancy Brown's bilocation power.
Got it.
And of course, she's wearing the creepy mask because why wouldn't she?
Right.
I thought I liked how they escalated this, and not just because he was on the stairs.
Yeah.
That joke didn't work, but because he's on the stairs.
Took me a second. Okay.
No, it didn't work. But because he's on the stairs when she slashes his leg, so he falls down rather than just being like, hiding under the bed and doing that. She starts doing like a villain speech over him.
Hello, Judd.
Stop it, Ellie. No, just slow down.
You're sweet, Norma. She's burning down in hell for what you did to her. I saw her there, Judd.
Much like this was something that we talked about was missing from the revived vet in the first one, where like he knew secrets about these people,
Right.
Because she starts talking about his wife, then like pulls up the mask to reveal, oh no, it's Judd's wife, I guess.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you're not my Norma, or whatever he says. I like that, but again, it's because that vulnerability that you see before of her like not knowing what's going on. It's a little bit confusing because it is like, it doesn't seem like she's just off. It seems like she's coming to terms with what's happening, whereas she's just fully embraced. Like, I'm a malevolent monster now.
Yeah.
And I have these powers that if she just had them, maybe it would make a little bit more sense to me. But I was a little confused as to how that journey, I would have liked to have watched that journey.
Sure.
But
how does that differ though from like Gage's journey? I guess it's a little less on the nose because Gage is a little harder to read in the first one, where he's just a baby and he's just creepy talking like that instead of wearing a mask and giving a speech.
Right. And I mean, and when he comes back, he gets to work right away.
Yeah, that's true.
He does not waste any time. Whereas Ellie's like, no, why don't you bathe me and I'll take a nap. Then I'll get some shit going.
Right. Yeah. Let's see. Rachel starts to notice something is off. She makes it back to the house. There's mud and blood everywhere. As Ellie approaches, Rachel is understandably freaked out, takes Gage and runs upstairs.
Yeah.
Ellie says, she doesn't want mommy here. And Lewis explains to Rachel what he did. And Rachel finally screams about like digging up our kid, which I think was like, well, somebody just like put a nose on this or hit it on the nose or whatever the phrase is. Just like, you dug up our child.
Yeah. Well, and I did like that change also of rather than like Rachel coming back just to get murdered.
Yeah.
And I like her like reacting, being like, this is awful, which makes more sense in this when you have like Gage still looks like a tiny little baby and he's, cute and adorable, but she's immediately like, oh my God, you're back. Whereas this kid looks fucked up and seems off, and you're like, I don't want to hug.
Yeah,
that's weird. And so I did like that. Yeah, she doesn't like her. And then that weird moment that would have been a more interesting thing to spend a little bit more time with as well is that like she's like, I don't want mommy here, and it's just us. Because it seems like at that point Lewis is like, yeah, he's fully involved. But then when she goes upstairs to hide with Gage and then Ellie starts chasing her with a knife, and you get this very sort of Shining-esque scene, not only of the busting through the door, but also of her of Rachel putting Gage out the window, almost like she does, Shelley does with Danny.
Oh, sure, in The Shining. Yep.
In the Shining. I said Shelley, like we're good friends. I couldn't think of the character's name. And then, but like to Lewis, and it's like, yeah, but that's the guy that made your daughter into this. Why are you giving your other child? That's a bad idea.
Yeah. I guess it's the only adult around, so you might as well drop your kid out to that person. Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't seem totally stoked about her having a knife. So
right. So of course, if Rachel's on screen and alone, she's involved with the Zelda sister here. So,
like, I got to stay busy. Why? I'll start thinking about a dumbwaiter.
This is how this particular film passes the Bechdel test. Every scene, it's just her talking to her own sister because it's the only other woman in the movie. There needs to be like a new
test. Like, is your female character thinking about a dumbwaiter? I'm sorry.
So. Yeah, Rachel appears in her bed as her sister with legs and bones that are all gnarled and twisted. And dressed like her, and out pops her sister, who it looks like is kind of like forcing her into a twisted position, like with her brain powers or something, and saying that she'll never get out of bed again, which is a callback to, I can't remember how well this movie did it, but I know that was in the book. That was like, there was spite from Zelda towards Rachel for being able to walk.
But it seemed like that, because you made it so much about her guilt about the death and not just feeling afraid and scared of her sister, which she was, but because they added the element of the death and they like the constant dumbwaiter thing, you made that be the issue and not the sickness and the deformity that she was afraid of. Right. And so it doesn't land as well. Yeah.
Do you think that they updated that maybe just because they wanted to get away from kind of a physical deformity as other type of thing?
I don't know, because they still make her extremely monstrous in this.
That's true.
So I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, maybe that was initially the idea, but then like filmmakers went, but we can make this cool. Yeah.
Right. Ellie pops out of nowhere with a knife. And they struggle. Lewis at this point is fully worthless. Like, I know he just caught Gage, but it's almost like they just need enough time for Rachel and Ellie to fight for a while. So Lewis runs around screaming, looking for people, cut back and forth. And at one point, I swear he's about to get bested by that cat. Because like he turns around and there's Church. He finds Judd's body. He finally runs outside. And that's where he ends up catching Gage in his arms. So I backtrack a little bit of Lewis's like running around with his hair on fire type of thing. Just after, Ellie stabs Rachel in the back and just sits next to her, twisting the knife calmly, which that kind of worked for me too.
Yeah, that was pretty heinous.
Unknown sadistic quality in Ellie, but I just liked how casual it was.
Remember when Daddy said there was nothing after this? Well, he was wrong. But it's not heaven.
Rachel comes to just enough just to say, "You're not my daughter," and then Ellie stabs her one last time.
Yeah, and I liked that even in that moment that Rachel's still like, I know what this is, and you're not it. Whereas, in the previous one, she's immediately just taken in by Gage, because what an adorable kid.
Right.
But I like that immediately just sort of like cut to her, Ellie, like dragging something big through the dragging a body through the cemetery, and you're like, oh god. So again, I'm thinking about part 2 and like how it seemed like their goal was to just make more of
make
them.
a family,
and then she's like, I'm not your daughter. I'm going to make you my mom, whether you like it or not.
Yep, totally. Although I do like the line right before Rachel dies, and she says, "Do not bury me in that place."
Yes, yeah,
that's kind of effective.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do? She buries her in that place. And Lewis follows her out there. Ellie manages to stab him in the chest somehow, and they start struggling. And she nearly slices his throat. This is the point where I was like, oh, I guess she wants the whole dead family like John wanted in part 2.
Right.
And he strangles her, grabs to the shovel to do the classic shovel in the neck in the graveyard to like kick the head off and kind of like putt the whole thing.
And it also does the total like evil. I mean, it's done in so many movies, but I think of Evil Dead 2, where it's like, oh, I'm this horrible monster, but oh, you're about to kill me. Oh, I'm your precious little daughter. Again.
Exactly.
You don't want to kill me.
Yeah. Almost beheads her, and he's stabbed in the back by revived Rachel. And I was like, damn, that was quick.
That was super quick.
Yeah. Like, again, we don't know the rules, and sometimes the rules are unnecessary because I don't want it to be like, what are they doing? Like counting down on their watch till she comes back out of the grave or something like that. But,
I mean, maybe it's like like a freshness thing where it's like we don't have a lot of whatever it's happening on there. It's like we don't got a lot of work to do. We just sort of like cover up that hole and then put some mud on it, like John Lithgow with the bee sting, and then boom, you're alive. And
you're good to go. Very low copay in that instance.
She's on the platinum plan.
Right. They drag his body out of frame, and we end with more drone shots similar to the opening. We get a shot of this dead family walking out of the woods, the 3 family members. They walk towards a car, and there's Church, jumps up on the hood of the car. I kind of like that because we haven't forgotten about him yet. And they just kind of all stare ominously at Gage.
It was in the car, yeah.
That kind of worked for me, like in the sense of like, if we're going to this point, we might as well just stop on poor Gage just looking helpless in a car. Yeah, I'm banging the drum for a terrified young infant to be murdered by his own family. But I thought that was a nice eerie ending if we're going to go to this point.
Again, it moves it out of the territory of being this emotional journey for this family to just being like, wouldn't this be cool? Wouldn't this be exactly like badass if this happened? Yeah. Like, I don't understand why they burned the house down, because you see that's one of the first things you see is the house is on fire, and they kind of like, oh, we'll get back to that. Why did you burn the house down?
Did I just look away for a second and they set fire to the house before they went to the cemetery?
I think he set fire to the house on the way back or something like that. Because I feel like the house burning is done after the fact. So rather than having it be this like the sort of the tragedy of Lewis just like not learning anything and falling forward, like once again, like no, it's not fresh enough. This time it'll work.
Yeah.
And there's that like losing himself in that grief. It just becomes this end of like an Italian zombie movie, where it's like, oh yeah, now we've unleashed hell and everyone's doomed. Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah.
And that's the way to do it. If you want to accept, like you said, if you just want to like, okay, we're taking it to that level, that's fine too. But maybe I'm too in love with the source material or something, but I'm just like, I miss that emotional core to this whole thing that's just lacking entirely.
Right. Even though I prefer the ending of the first one where the wife comes back, but then even in that movie, it's not even implied. She does stab him at the end, whereas like I like the book better, which is what much more like ends on this like dour, grim note of like what will happen.
Yeah, like this is going to end well, but it doesn't tell you. Like it lets you figure that out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or maybe it's fine. I don't know. But this one, it is much more sort of an apocalyptic ending.
And maybe that works for some people. But like, I agree with you. I prefer like the kind of emotional family situation that they're in.
Again, like if there was some more like, if there was an emotional weight to it or like a counterpoint that like, oh, well, they're all together at the end like this, that might have meant something other than just feeling like this is a cool thing. Right. That would be neat.
Well, on that note, lest we forget, there is a cover version of the Ramones song by a punk band called Starcrawler. And I don't keep up on music as much as I used to, but there was something lacking about that too, just to end it all.
Like, come on. Just use the original song.
Right.
Like, why? Like, I mean, you could make the argument about remaking this in general, why? But that's just, I think like that's a good example of just the whole affair of just like, the Ramones did this already.
Yeah.
You don't need to do it.
And it sounds so good, as we've discussed. You know? Yeah. Nothing else is going to touch that.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's honor our dead, please. There are only 6 because we ain't counting animals or flashbacks.
Go to hell, animals.
Right. Victor Pascal, played by Absa Ahmed, bled out after head wound. Zelda Goldman, played by Alyssa Levine, fell down dumbwaiter shaft. Ellie Creed, played by Jete Lawrence, hit by oil tanker semi. Judd Crandall, played by John Lithgow, stabbed repeatedly by Ellie Creed. Rachel Creed, played by Amy Schmitz, stabbed by Ellie Creed. Lewis Creed, played by Jason Clarke, stabbed in the back by Rachel Creed. And that's it. Overall, I could pick out some horror stuff that I liked in it, but yeah, I have a hard time judging this one just on its own merits. Mm-hmm. And maybe again, it's because we watched the other one like so close together and it's so fresh in my grave mind that I can't help but resuscitate the first one and compare. But I do think
there are just legitimate issues with it, regardless of that. Of what I'm talking about, just like there's no whatever relationships there are don't feel very real or like they just feel like moving pieces around. Rachel leaving just seems convenient. I don't know.
A couple of neat gore shots. Love the bathtub scene.
Yep.
The staples in the back of head. Solid stuff.
Definitely got some moments, but a little lacking. I am curious about what they're going to do with the prequel.
Right.
Simply because like, okay, well now you're much like part 2, like you're untethered from this. You're untethered for trying to tell this story.
Very true.
Have like the pieces around. You have these concepts. What are you going to do with it?
Right.
And so let's see. As much as I didn't love this one, I'm not really rolling my eyes at the concept of watching the next one.
Totally. I know zero about that. And it's kind of why I wanted to watch these, because I was curious to watch. I think it's called Bloodlines or something like that. And it's got David Duchovny in it. So that was enough for me to give a watch to something. So yeah, I'm weirdly looking forward to watching that. Yeah. So, all right. Well, we did have a contest on our Instagram page to get us a little bit more in the way of listenership, and we had lots of people participate, tagging some people. Luckily, I was very happy to see not a whole lot of, in fact, no just arbitrary tagging of people constantly, because I always just feel bad for people when that happens to them. So thanks for only grabbing the people that you think might actually enjoy the show. So kudos. Yeah. So what we're going to do is, in the spirit of this type of show and John and I's past, we're not going to use any sort of online calculator or random number generator or anything. I got a list here of numbers, and we're going to roll some good old-fashioned D&D dice to see who comes out on top and gets this piece of art that James Gannon did for the Psycho series, and you get to choose which piece of art goes out, and he'll send you a nice physical print, because we like physical media here at the podcast. So let me roll this dice, and here in a second, we will know. It is Brady Sean 91. Woo! So congratulations. And you're going to get this original piece of artwork. James is out of the country right now on a shoot, so it might take a little bit of time. I will email you through Instagram, get your mailing address, and we'll set that up sometime in the next month or so.
Yeah, congratulations. And thank you so much for listening to the show.
Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for hassling your good friends to come on board, and hopefully they like it too. I'd like to do a couple more of these kind of contests. It's kind of fun to give away some good quality artwork and maybe grow the show just a little bit in the new year. So I think that about wraps it up for this week. We got one more in the Pet Sematary series. There's just 4 this time, and then we'll do our mid-show wrap-up, and we'll probably announce next week what we're doing next to get us into the Christmas season.
That's so strange. That's such a strange, like, jumping around, how it's like, it's almost like the Halloween franchise and the different branches it takes, where it's like, here's 1 and 2, and now a remake, and now a prequel to that remake.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
we're really into the throes of modern horror now.
There you go. Yeah, we're keeping track and watching them all, because that's the point.
That's right.
Yeah. So yes, thanks for following us on Instagram. If you do, we are this may hurt a bit pod over there. We're at Hurt a Bit Pod on YouTube. John's been putting up all the episodes over there if you like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, and you can email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. So strap into Paramount Plus, and we will see you in a couple of weeks for Pet Sematary Bloodlines. Talk to you then.
Good night.
This has been a Two Penguins media production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling, and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at thismayhurtabitpod and on Twitter at hurtabit. Email us at thismayhurtabit@gmail.com. And if you are so inclined, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.